Welcome to the Big Friendly Swim podcast. And for those who may not know you, could just introduce yourself and give a little bit of a explanation of who you are, like where you come from.
Yeah. Hello, big friendly podcast. My name is Munzy Kabbara. I'm a swimmer at Texas A&M. Going into my third year. I'm studying international studies of commerce. Um, I represented Lebanon in the 2021 Olympics, and hoping to go for 2024. And yeah, I just came back from the Asian Games, and excited to answer any questions you might have.
So talk to me about your experience at the Asian Games, because I feel like in the U.S. that's a pretty almost like unheard of competition. Like not a lot, nobody really pays any attention to it. What are some of the takeaways from the meet for you?
You know, it's pretty cool. Realize when you get there that it is the second biggest games in the underneath the Olympic Games. So it goes Olympic Games, Asian Games, and then all the other games like Pan American Games, all these other ones. And it was so cool. The opening ceremony was by far better than the Olympics in Tokyo. One, there wasn't a lot of people there wasn't any people in Tokyo because of COVID, but this games had, I mean, everything. The village was nice. The facilities were top notch. Um, it was an absolute amazing experience, especially to represent my country, Lebanon, but also just in general to be at that games. It was a different type of stigma. It was a different type of feeling that you could tell there was something special about that games. And I think China did an amazing job at um, at putting together that games, from the opening ceremony to the facilities to the how things ran. It was the easiest trip that I have ever been on. I had everything that I needed, had all the help that I needed. I didn't have to go do anything for myself. It was pretty awesome.
I kind of wish there was a little bit more focus put on these like games held for just like a few specific countries, because there's probably a lot of pride. Like it's the Asian Games, there's probably a lot of pride taken in them, similar to like the Commonwealth Games or the Pan American Games. That like people just don't notice it or pay attention to it because it's deemed like a smaller sporting event, at least in like other parts of the world.
Yeah, nobody really knows about the Asian Games, and it's funny you say like being there. A lot of people, countries are proud to hold their flag and stuff. It was at home for China, and China sweep the medal board. I'm pretty sure it's still going on now, but they are just. I mean, they were just back to back to back to back. It was insane. It was insane watching that. I mean, you saw people rise to the occasion. You saw people's teams like it was almost like a college swimming. It was very the crowd was big, but it wasn't a lot of swimmers. So you could see that like all the teams were very, very tight knit and they all knew each other. It wasn't like they were taking random guys from here and here and here. The team seemed like like each individual team from Korea to Japan to China, they seemed like they knew each other, which was super, super fun to watch. I mean, it was very emotional too. Like you get worn out watching the races. I mean, I have to like not go to certain finals because I know I'll get really excited, especially with. I mean, there was guys on right about to break world records at that meet, and I know that they weren't fully rested, which is why it's crazy. You see people rise to the occasion of, oh, this is my hometown. Oh, this is my family's here. My dad or mom is here. The president of the country is here. I mean, there's our leader of the country. But yeah, it was pretty awesome to just take that all in.
You mentioned like the pride of having like your family there and like the leader of your country there, and it almost seems like, at least I know China especially targeted this meet this year as like their big meet of the year, because there was a lot of people talking after like World Championships. Oh, a few people from China did well, but like they didn't really have a great year. Like they had one or two standout swimmers, and then they had like
They made
the
sure they made sure
yeah
to definitely lay down the hammer
yeah
on some of the events. We were looking like this is going to be an insane Olympic race, from the 100 free to the 100 back to the 100 and 200 breast. I mean, I don't think they left an event where it wasn't
The medley relay, especially, that stands
The
out to me.
relay,
That's gonna be a tight race between like China, U.S., Italy, Great Britain, like so many different countries right
I
there.
bet you all four of those people can break the world record.
Oh yeah, especially if Great Britain gets Adam Peaty back, they'll be right there. So, talk to me about your experience competing for Lebanon, and like, was there a consideration to compete for the U.S. and to represent the U.S., or like, what drew you to eventually make the decision to compete for Lebanon internationally?
I mean, there was one point in my life in 2017 where I was close to making a junior national team, but I was definitely on it for Lebanon, and it was an opportunity that I kind of had to. I thought about for a little bit, but not that long, and I decided that I would rather go to a country and be there first rather than go to the U.S. And I think it would have been possible. I've had little bit of speed bumps along the way, but at the same time, I think that competing for Lebanon, like I've always wanted to represent Lebanon. I represent it in International Day in my school and all these other things, and I thought, why not uh, represent them on the biggest stage in the world? And then as soon as I turned 12, I think that was when my dream to become an Olympian just started. I didn't really care in what, and swimming was the only thing that I really could do or do well. I was horrible at every other sport, but competing for Lebanon is unlike anything I've ever done in my life. I've competed for clubs, I competed in college, compete for myself and for my family, but competing for Lebanon is something in itself entirely. Uh, you've got the back of a nation that just loves to support their athletes. They don't always know what their athletes are doing or who their athletes are, but whenever they do know, you get. I mean, I always love telling the story. On the plane back from the Olympics, I went from having, I think, 1,000, like 1,500, 2,000 followers, and I got like 11 or 12,000 in a matter of like 6 hours. It was not even like, I didn't even know how it happened, but it happened. And I remember I got some messages that I was bawling, crying, or reading because I mean they were really nice messages, and you could tell people put thought into them because I mean there was messages from like, oh, we want you to come and speak at this thing, to like, oh my God, you're inspiring an entire group of kids, an entire generation. And it's a huge weight to carry, but I love knowing that I can make an impact in that way.
You talk about like the joy of representing your country. That's like something growing up that I was always kind of jealous of, because being from Palestine, I don't get that. I don't get that option because I don't have citizenship for Palestine or Lebanon, or like I have U.S. citizenship. But that was always something. Whenever I saw somebody with like a flag for Lebanon or Palestine or any Middle Eastern country, I was like, yeah.
It is a privilege. It is a
Yeah.
privilege to represent Lebanon and to carry that flag and wear it on my chest and on my back.
I remember especially watching like Ahmed Hafnaoui. I mean, he's from Tunisia, but watching him, and I'm like, yeah, somebody with the same name as me.
It was I was there. I was in the arena when he won. And after the race, because I've known him for a while because we go to Arab champs and stuff, and I remember going up to him after, and I was like, dude, what happened? I was like, how did you even pull that off? I mean, he was good. I mean, he's in the A final at the Olympics. Of course, he's
Yeah.
good, but there was such a wide range between him and first. It was almost like it was basically the impossible. And I remember he told me, he goes, didn't want to get last. He goes, I was there. He's like, if I died, I died. What's the worst? I came eighth in the morning. He goes, I didn't want to get last. Like,
I
I
mean,
did not care.
he barely even got into that final. If my memory is right, he was like
That he
a
barely
tenth of a
made the final.
second.
He
Tenth
barely
of a
made the
second got
final.
him in, and then he ripped like 3 seconds off his best time and won the whole thing. And then he backed it up this year. He backed it up this year, and he went another huge best time by like three. He went 340 point. First time somebody's gone 340 in 11 years. So he's backed it up. It's pretty awesome seeing like Middle Eastern countries succeeding and doing well, and like sort of being like, hey, it isn't just the U.S., Australia, and China. Like, there's other countries in the world too.
Yeah.
So Texas A&M, what brought you there? Like, what was the initial drive to go to school there, and like, how has your experience been, like both academically and like competing?
I love it here. I wouldn't change. Even if I didn't swim, I would definitely go to Texas A&M. I mean, the community that they have around everyone, um, that they have like supporting you, like especially support staff for athletes, but also in general. We have the quote that we tell recruits that it's almost you have to try to fail here because they give you every opportunity to succeed and they give you all the resources that you need to succeed. But more than that, for my team, it drove me the family aspect. And I mean, I have one biological sister, but I have 26 brothers. And that's what drove me to pick A&M, especially on my recruiting trip. I loved all the other places that I went and visited, but I just felt that A&M was a sense of home for me. I mean, it just kind of like when you know, you know. And I remember I was like, this is where I want to spend the next 4 or 5 years. I want to be at A&M. And so, I mean, I made a decision 3 years ago that, or a couple, a little 4 years ago that this was exactly where I wanted to be. And I think it's proven to be everything I wanted and more.
If you don't mind me asking, what other schools were in your consideration that you like were visiting?
Uh, Out of respect to them, I mean, I loved all of them. I'm just not gonna say
Yeah, no
the
worries.
ones, but I mean, there were SEC schools, Big 12 schools, but I mean, every one of them it was very close. Let me just say that. It was very close between all the other schools that I visited. I loved them. I thought that they were awesome. I thought they each had their own unique attributes to offer. It just it worked out with Texas A&M differently.
Well, I'm glad it worked out. So sort of going back to the Olympics and World Championships, you were at World Championships in 2019, and then you were at the Olympics in 2021, and then if I'm correct, you were at World Championships these past 2 years as well.
Yes.
So, what was the experience like at first, like being new to the international stage, at least new to the senior international stage? And like, how did your experiences and the things that you've learned give you perspective both to your life and to your college swimming career?
You
It's a bit of
know,
a loaded question. I'm sorry.
no, that's good. I'm just making sure I answer all parts of the
Yeah.
question. But being on the world stage is something that's, I mean, it is a different kind of meet. I remember my first one was actually short course worlds in 2018, but 2019 was my first like world championships long course worlds, and it was a big shock. I mean, from the stadiums to the arenas to the call rooms, everything's different. The name tags, the ID badges, it's a big shock. And I think I was 16 at the time, and it was a huge shock. And I remember being really, really nervous, but I kind of love the pressure. That's where I thrive when there is pressure put on me. And and I remember I went unrested. I didn't rest for that Worlds in 2019 fully because we had futures as a team. Like I think the week after, and I made a decision that I wanted to be there for my team, but I wanted to go to Worlds. Like I wanted to see what I had, and I rested for 3 days. Got on the plane. I basically rested on the plane. I rested for like 2 3 days, and went at best time and broke the national record. And I remember it was just so much adrenaline because I remember stepping on the blocks and like your brain slows down time whenever it's under like that kind of stress. And I remember just taking a second and it felt like I looked around for way too long. I looked at all the people and all the stands, everybody's clapping and cheering. And it just, I mean, it ignited something. It was like a feeling that I wanted to be in this forever, like as long as I can do it. And I remember I was just like, I don't care if I die. I don't care if I like totally do horrible, but I want to make sure that I leave everything that I've got in the tank in the pool. And it was a pretty amazing experience the first time, but then every single time it gets a little easier. I think in the Olympics it was a lot harder for me to swim because yeah, I was excited. I was kind of trying to put more pressure on myself so I could get kind of hyped up, but there was no people in the stand. There's only like the swimmers and coaches, which got decently loud. But I heard like even at Worlds in Budapest, Budapest is, I mean, they had when they had Christoph Milak, you couldn't hear yourself think in the building. So there's definitely the aspect of the crowd that I love in the senior international stage, because you can feel it. Like everybody's there, everybody's excited, everybody's wanting to see a world record or some breakout swim from somebody in lane 8. Like that's what they live for, and that's kind of what drives me um, to be uh, not only on the world stage in that sense, but it's also when I'm representing Lebanon or at Worlds, it's I'm representing the country. I'm representing the religions within that country because nobody really knows if you're Christian or Muslim or whatever. And then uh, I'm representing my family and Texas A&M and all these other things. So it's kind of cool. I mean, our mesh bags say A&M, and that's what I usually take. So it's you represent a lot of different groups that you're a part of. And I think it's cool when everybody sees, oh, this guy's from NO, this guy's from IU, oh, this guy's from whatever. And you see those things and it drives you to be a better person because you know that the eyes are on you regardless of where you are. Somebody's always watching. And you don't want to ever give them that split second where you have a moment of slip up and then they think that, oh, all these people are like this. And that's motivates me to conduct myself in different ways to the best of my ability.
You know, it's a similar feeling that a lot of athletes talk about. And you brought up like the Budapest World Championships. The Hungarians know their swimming. They love swimming. Like it's because they hosted World Championships as well in 2017. They love swimming there. They've created some world class athletes there. But I a lot of the athletes that I've interviewed, like when they talk about their first World Championships or first Olympics, they talk about that feeling of being up on the blocks and being like, and just kind of like time slows down a bit. And it's like you're just taking in the experience. And a lot of people will go in and either the pressure will get to them and they'll add a lot of time or they'll have a difficult meet, or it'll be just the right amount of pressure that they'll go a huge best time and then like break a national record or have it like the meet of their lives. So it's a similar experience, I think, just in like almost like it's a similar experience in different fonts based off of who you're asking.
No, that's 100%. I 100% agree with that. And it was really cool. I talked to at the Olympics. I remember, I mean, I was 18 at the time, and I was just like, I was wondering how can I make this Olympic swim perfect. And I remember I grabbed one guy, or I didn't grab the guy, but he saw my jacket. He saw I had Lebanese flag, and he goes, "Oh, you represent Lebanon." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I'm going A&M, all this other stuff." And he goes, "Oh, I'm representing Canada." And he was, uh, I think he was the oldest guy on their team, and he had made
Oh,
his name
Brent
was
Hayden.
Brent Hayden. Yeah, and he was like, "Yeah, my wife's Lebanese, and my this is where my comeback story started, and all these other in Zaytuna Bay." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." I was like, and so we were talking, and he kind of caught me off guard, and I basically told him, I said, "You've won an Olympic medal. You've been to the Olympics multiple times." I was like, "How do you make your Olympic swim perfect? Like, how do you? Is it just because you're here and stuff?" And he gave me a really good piece of advice that I took not only for the Olympics but like even all the World Championships. He goes, "You're not gonna swim fast just because it's Worlds or just because it's the Olympics." He said, "You have to make sure that you do everything correctly and everything in the best of your ability to make sure that you're ready." And then he goes, "And then it'll be perfect. It'll be because you're at the Olympics, you'll have that extra edge, and you can't let it get to you." And that's, I mean, I've taken that in through SECs, NCAA's, all this other stuff. I didn't do well at those meets, but that's how my mindset has been ever since that day. That was the best piece of advice somebody probably had given me, and the 20 something years or 10 something years that I've been swimming.
That's a pretty awesome that's a pretty awesome connection to make. That like you happen to be at this meet with hundreds of other athletes, and you ran into probably the guy there with like the most
Most
experience out of
experience.
anybody. That's pretty awesome. He had a fantastic meet himself. He became the oldest person to break 48 in the 100 free. So he had a pretty fantastic meet himself. So my last question for you, sort of a little bit of a heavier topic. So feel free to like withhold or share only as much as you're comfortable with. But so while researching for this interview, I read about that you had a stroke when you were 11. Could you talk about like how that shaped your development as a person and as an athlete, and like what went through your head experiencing this at such a young age, and like how did you process it heading into like obviously like high school and as you got older?
I'm going to give you a couple things because the stroke definitely at a young age was a shocker. But I don't know, recently, if you've seen my Instagram post, but I had back surgery last year. Um, uh, it's been a year, actually, like a week ago. It was a year and ago, and I stopped swimming for 8 months and basically trained for like 2.5, 3 months before Worlds and went at best time. And I had gained like 30 pounds of because I was eating really good during those 8 months. But and then I got into a really really serious car accident that should have been fatal after that. After I gotten back into shape, and it's a combination of it. It's kind of like every couple steps you get a wake up call. The stroke was definitely at a young age. I think at the time I didn't really care about swimming. Like I was kind of like, like I might not even want to do this. And I had the stroke, and for some reason, all in the ambulance when I was riding with my dad, I was like, "Will I be able to swim again?" And my dad was like, "What? Like, who cares about swimming? Half your face and body is paralyzed." And so that was, I remember like I never took for granted being able to do the stuff that I love. And I think coming into A&M, I was super excited. I mean, I was NCAA qualifier, SEC qualifier. I was just kind of going through the motions, like trying to work my way up and all this other stuff. And then I had to have back surgery last summer, and it was devastating because I was like, when you're 12, when you're 10, 11, 12, you can take a year off and probably get away with it. You're not going to gain this much weight or lose the feel for the water. You just feel a little weird some of the times. And I remember coming back uh, after my surgery, not even knowing if I wanted to swim. And because I was so worried to do anything to compromise my life after swimming, because that was the big question. And I decided that, you know what, I want to do this again. I want to go all in. This is exactly what I love. I can't wait to get back in the water and all this other stuff. But it taught me, I think I took for granted training with A&M and all the resources that they had, because the resources, especially for the surgery, for the recovery after the surgery, the physical therapy, every single thing was, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better road to be paved for me. And that was definitely like a wake up call on its own, where I was like, you know what, I got a lot of people supporting me. I got a lot of things to be grateful for. Surgery is a bump in the road. And I just believed. Our big thing with Jay Holmes and Jason Kalanick is believe that you can do something special. And for 3 months, I just put my head down. I lost 30 pounds, which was horrible, but I did it. Um, and I got into decent enough shape, and my 400 IM was nowhere near what I thought it was going to be, and my 200 IM I just happened to go best time in probably 2 years, which was crazy for me because I was like, there's no way. Like I believed that I could do it, but it was basically the impossible for what my coaches were telling me. But they put their trust in me and that I was doing the right thing. And the sad part was, right when I had gotten back into shape before Worlds, I got into a horrible 10-car pileup on a freeway because some idiots decided to wreck into each other, and I stopped, and all the other people behind me hit me. But it was that was the biggest adrenaline rush I think I've ever had in my entire life, because you think you might actually die, and or have something really horrible happen to you. And I remember getting out of the car, and I mean, I had sunglasses on, so it split my nose open, and I saw blood running down my face in the mirror of the car, and I was like, oh god. And I touched myself everywhere else. Back didn't hurt, neck didn't hurt. Neck was just crooked a little bit, but I mean, everything was fine. I was like, I almost started like just crying, because I was like, dude, that was horrible. I looked at my car; it was like a tin can, it was like a soda can, and it it makes you appreciate the day to day stuff. It makes you appreciate that at any second it could be over. At any second you could be taken away from you. And I think that's really changed my mind frame and how I gear myself towards swimming, towards life in general. I mean, I leave everything in the pool every meet that I go to now. I don't wait. I don't wait for taper season. I don't wait for if I feel good, even if I don't feel good, I'm giving everything I can, because I know that the last time that I thought I was gonna have another 2 or 3 years, it was my last race that most likely could have been my last race at Worlds in 2022. So yeah, that's how those things affected me, and I'm really glad. I actually wouldn't change anything, if I'm being honest, because I think you learn and grow uh, throughout those times, and you really get to see a different perspective of you, and I got to learn a lot more about myself. I could only After my back surgery, I could only sit and do a certain number of things, which was watch TV, lay in bed, and walk for 5 minutes every day. That was it. And so I kind of had to spend a lot of time with myself. Of course, my family, I mean, they were my biggest support system, but it was, you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn to, you learn to live life to the fullest. That sounds cheesy, but like live every day like it's your last. But it is really true. And I didn't really notice that until after the fact that all those things happen. And I think now I mean, even with my relationships outside of my family, like I've been trying to work on a lot of stuff because you never know when it can be taken away from you.
You know, I think a lot of experiences like that they have to change you. They will change you. And I think it's a testament to the person that you are, and like to the experiences that you've had, that you've come out the other side a better person who's learned from them and is looking back on them saying like, I'm glad this happened. Like, I'm glad I've had these learning experiences, and this is how I want to use them in the future, and this is how I want to be able to change my life for the better.
I 100% agree.
All right, Munzy. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been fantastic.
I
I'm glad we got this sorted out.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited uh, to be a part of this. Is it the Big and Friendly or Big Friendly?
It's the Big Friendly Swim Podcast.
Big Friendly Swim Podcast. Well, it was an honor to be a part of the Big Friendly Swim Podcast. Thank you so much for having me. And we need to do this again sometime.
Yeah, and you're welcome anytime. You when you get the chance, send me a text on Instagram with your like an address that I can ship something to. I'm gonna send you trying to send these to everybody that interview, and I'll send you a Big Friendly Swim Podcast sticker.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm gonna
Yeah,
stick it
no
to my
problem.
computer. I'm gonna stick it to my computer with all the other stickers.
All
Thank you
right,
so
man.
much, Ahmed.
Yeah,
Nice to meet
thank
you.
you. Nice to meet you too.
If we're ever at a swim meet, if I'm ever in Irvine, I don't know where you live in California, but oh, you said Bay Area. But if I'm ever in Irvine, or you're ever to meet somewhere and you see it on my story, please, I would love to meet you. I'd love to see you.
I would be so happy to meet you. Always happy to meet somebody from Lebanon.